Hey, it's Emily Waiwu. Happy Dragon Boat Festival. Earlier this year, I caught up with a friend, Mimi Yu. Mimi is a musician, a cellist who started playing music at the age of 4. She was then known as a child prodigy. So as a teenager, she left her home in Taiwan to pursue an international career in classical music.
Yes, I'm a child of southern Taiwan, where it's always sunny and the leaves never turn red. I was very lucky to have very supportive parents who didn't know anything about music, but who devoted all of their time and energy into helping me become the musician that I want to become.
She went to the US. As a teenager, Mimi attended the Cleveland Institute of Music, then Harvard University, then the Juilliard School, where she played as the first cello.
After Harvard, I basically decided that I needed to keep music in my life, which is unusual because a lot of people at Harvard, after they graduate, they could switch careers. It's not uncommon, but I decided that, I wanted to move to New York, be an artist, live the bohemian life. I was up near Columbia, like in Washington Heights, and the room is probably the size of, I don't know, this table, like half of this table was so small. It could barely fit my cello. I had to leave the cello at Juilliard in my locker. And I had like a bed and a desk. I was living like a monk, but I could see the Washington Bridge from my window. And every night I would come back from Juilliard and I have nothing. I was dirt poor, just this poor musician, but I felt so content that I chose this path. It was a strange feeling, yeah. I remember one of my cello teachers, Paul Katz, he dropped me off in New York. After our summer together, we spent the summer on Shelter Island playing with Mr. Perlman, Itzhak Perlman.
Who was your mentor?
Yeah, so they were all really just amazing mentors to me. So he was so kind and he dropped me off. We drove from Long Island to New York. And then he dropped me off and he said, well, this city is great if you have money. I was like, oh no. And if you don't have money, well. But, it's so young, in your 20s, you just want to, it was just a dream, because I wanted to be living in the city and hanging out with artists and going on tours, and that's just what I wanted to do.
Violinist Paul Katz and Itzhak Perlman were her mentors. She worked with Yo-Yo Ma, and she wrote 2 books, all before the age of 25. Then everything changed. Mimi was impacted by depression so severely that she had to stop playing music. Mimi's story to me is one of personal resilience. In 2019, she published her 3rd book, titled The Unforgetting Body, 因为身体记得. She detailed her recovery from depression and a search for a mindset that prioritized her actual needs.
I think basically what happened to me as I, think about the past experiences, it might help others as you look at your own life. What happened to me was that I was so driven for so long, so ambitious and so goal-oriented. And some parts of the journey, I forgot to take care of my body and my mental health and myself. So at some point, your body will start to send you little signals, maybe, when I was practicing 12 hours a day, I really wasn't eating that well or at all. Or, when I was very stressed before a concert. Once I was traveling to Florida from New York and there was a big winter storm and I just was so stressed. I was so worried I couldn't get to Florida. And the winter storm, I think, the snow was like maybe like all the way to my thighs. But I was just like running around on the block with just chaotic, trying to find a taxi, trying to figure out how I could get to the airport. And if like all that stress adds up. And finally, one tour that I was supposed to go on, I just physically and mentally collapsed and couldn't do it anymore. And I stopped and I decided that I am going to take this time to look into what exactly makes me happy and how I could have a better balance doing the things that I love.
In your book, The Unforgetting Body, you open with the story of how you decided that you were not going to go on a tour and you were told, are you sure are you sure there's going to be consequences to this?
Right. I think it's really shocking when, if I tell people the kind of opportunities that I got to have, the kind of experiences, and to turn around and give it up, I think would have been probably a big shocker to a lot of people. But at the time, I just physically couldn't do it. And I was very sick. I was quite depressed. And I knew that I needed a break and I needed a rest. And so I think maybe underneath that decision, there is still this innate confidence in that I trusted that even if I make this temporary decision, that I still will somehow find a way of life in the upcoming years that can make it work.
If I may continue with the opening story with the book, that wasn't the first time that you had experienced something like that, but perhaps this was the last time that you had wanted it to be like that.
Yeah, I'm sure, like with all things, like, things build up and in our body, in our life. And so first it was like tiny signals and then it's probably like bigger signals. And so that's why the book focuses so much on listening to your body.
Yeah.
Because it's ironic because as a musician, somehow I failed to listen to my own body. I was so busy listening to the cello and to other people's instruments. And the most instrument that we all have in our life, in our one life, the body, I completely ignored it.
Well, I think it's easy to say that in retrospect. You were, 25 years old?
I mean, I also think in our culture and in our systems, our societal systems, listening to your body is actually underrated and underguided. It's kind of like a guidance. Like I had to spend then a lot of time rebuilding and retuning. Like you tune your instruments. Like I have to retune my body through a lot of different exercises and a lot of different methodologies.
Beginning story that you told us in that book, you were actually on your way to play with Perlman.
Mm-hmm.
What was that conversation like afterwards?
I cannot ask for more understanding, supportive masters and accepting. I'm just so proud to have been and continue to be part of the community. And I think also in the music world, everybody realizes that it's a very cutthroat business, and sometimes people need breaks. Like, Horowitz took like a 10-year break and couldn't play. Not bragging and saying that I'm of any caliber of Horowitz. I'm just saying that I think people were very understanding in that I needed this time off. And I really appreciated it from like the bottom of my heart because, I'm sure I caused a lot of logistical difficulties. But the kind of love that the Perlmans poured into us and into the community into building a community that's it's just so rare and beautiful in this world, and not just music world, like in this wide world. We spend a lot of time together, and much of the time, sometimes it's really not even about music. It's about like how to be a person. And the way that they shaped and cultivated all of us is really remarkable. And so I encourage everybody to check them out. It's the Perlman Music Program. And every year it's on Shelter Island out in Long Island in New York. And it's just really phenomenal.
Today, Mimi's no longer performing at national concert halls, but she's the happiest she's ever been. And she's been sharing her story through her social media, her teachings, her speaking engagements, and her podcasts. The year 2025, it's been a stressful year for many people around the world. And this is why I wanted to have this conversation with Mimi about her road to recovery. In this book, she details her search for a balanced living through retuning her body, healthy living, and Buddhism. You've visited all the monasteries in the United States.
And Europe.
And Europe. But also at the time in the 2010s, mental health and how we talk about, and we as in Taiwanese or Asians, how we talk about mental wellness is just so different back here in Taiwan. What was the kind of support from the Taiwanese community that really helped at the time? Because I think a lot of Asians, a lot of high-achieving Asians go through this where there's pain that you cannot talk about.
That's so interesting. I have to think because at the time, I've only had therapists who speak French and English. So in the book, they were featured because I'm eternally grateful to them. Like they really, starting from Harvard, I just started. I feel like I could have started earlier, but in the beginning, when I first got to the US, I felt a lot of stigma and shame. Like there was this little office that's like for cognitive behavior or whatever, and I just thought, oh, only losers go there. in my traditional thinking, I just felt like, oh, I could not seek help. And then later, when I started to seek help, they were such great sounding boards. But I think what the Asian community provided is the way to connect with the body. And then from that, combining that with my Western therapist was sort of like how my unique way of being able to recover.
How many therapists did you go through before you found a match? Or for me, I think I went through 3 before the 4th one really came through. Right. She was a Korean American. I think she knew a bit more about what it meant to be Asian, what it meant to be international student,
right.
Who the others were really well-intentioned, but there was just a very big cultural gap.
Yeah, it's kind of like a marriage. And you really have to like click with them, but it is hilarious. Once I even like had like a male therapist, and then he was like very unhelpful, and I was like, oh no, what do I do? I only saw him once, and then once I had my Harvard therapist, who was also a guy, and he was really nice. But like, I just also couldn't really connect with him. Ended up, my French therapist was sort of like the one that I think eventually I really loved. And I also had like an American therapist. So both of them together, I think, was really helpful. My French therapist, I love her so much. And she's like, well, you've really graduated. Like, you really should stop seeing me because you're doing so well. I was like, no, don't break up with me. I want to see you. And it's like, no, you should save the space for others, and you can go out and help other people now. Like, you're doing fine.
In Taiwan, I think now there's a lot more conversations about mental health. There's a lot more accepted.
I think what really struck me, and which I, relayed in 因为身体记得, is that eventually I realized that we're all like whole beings. Mental health is only, one part of your health. Like when your body's not feeling well, of course you're not going to be all that happy. And so that's where sort of like the Asian modalities really helped me, in that I started to focus on my body, and I started from diet to exercise, trying to make sure that the body feels good. And then when the body feels good, slowly things start to open up.
Yeah. Can we talk about your path in finding how to work with your body? And a lot of this was through your
Traditional Chinese medicine.
traditional Chinese medicine, but also through getting in touch with Buddhism and going through the monasteries.
Right.
You've met anybody from 圣严法师 to 星云法师 to a Vietnamese monk in France. You've toured all of the monasteries possible. Talk to us about that process.
Yeah. So I was really trying hard to rebuild. In rebuilding, I thought, I will just go and find these enlightened people and ask them for advice. And all the great Fashis of the world, Zhen Yan Fashi and Xing Yun Fashi, were all so kind, and each individually gave me great pieces of wisdom. I will say what I really remember also is when I was in France. So this was Thich Nhat Hanh, Yixing Chanshi, Plum Village near like Bordeaux, France. It wasn't like a monastery because there were children running around, paintings by kids, and everybody was like a family sitting and chanting and singing. And then I saw a French monk, and he looked so joyful. He was so happy. And I just looked at him, and then I immediately also felt so much joy. And that moment kind of struck me. And I realized that like enlightened people are just very joyful people. You know, there's not like the whole like, you gotta suffer to reach like the top level of da-da-da. No, this guy was just like smiling, and like his whole presence was emanating with pure joy of being right here, right now. And that's what it is. Like, that's all there is. And I remember that so vividly even now, just that sheer sense of pure joy. I think I'm getting closer and closer to that after, practicing. He's probably just like a quiet monk living in France, but I don't even know his name. We didn't even talk. It was just that one moment of deep connection of his joy passing on to me.
For all the trips you go on to the monastery, are you looking for something?
Yeah, I think inherently, maybe subconsciously I am. I'm also just by nature a very curious person, and I love traveling. And so for a long time, I was looking for answers. How can I have everything that I thought I wanted in life, music, career? How can I still be unhappy? And how can I be happy again? So that was sort of like the beginning point of searching. And then searching through books, searching through travel, searching through trips, and searching for guidance from the masters. And then eventually I realized all the answer lies within me. And then that's sort of like the beginning moment that you've arrived. I think the very top musicians reach a level where music flows through them, and we're all just vessels for these beautiful vibrations that could touch people. And then in the monasteries, same things could happen in that the teachings are also a kind of vibrations. And those vibrations can make us joyful or can calm us down when we're very agitated, can make us happier when we're sad. And same thing with therapy, actually. Like, that's also a vibration. Like, that's why you click with your therapist or not, is that when the therapist is very in touch with his or her presence, then they also transmit and emanate a certain vibration that make you feel okay. Yeah. And so that guy, he transmitted vibrations of joy. And to this day, I remember his joy. Yeah. And I'm relaying the story of his joy to all of you. So you're all joyful.
There was a story I really loved from your book where you were talking about the importance of eating well. You talked about in your early days as an international student, you eat on the cheap, you eat from the vending machines, but you didn't realize the harm that it was doing to your body. And then later on, you say in the book, which is the wisdom of don't eat while angry because you're eating in toxic. Talk to us about that.
I used to eat to save money, which really is just a scarcity mindset. Like, I didn't have the abundance mindset. So I thought I wanted to save money because I know that my parents were not well off. So they put so much already into my education. I wanted to save as much as I can. So I stopped the school meal plan. And I would sometimes bag lunches from my high school and eat leftovers. And then the vending machine burger was $1. So yeah, again, cumulatively, when you continue to cook, make situations intolerable for your body, then your body is going to retaliate one day. And in traditional Chinese medicine, your stomach is actually very linked to your heart. And so when your stomach is not happy, you're not going to be that happy. Depression could come from having bad sleep or, not eating well. These days, I'm still learning, because that was such a traumatic period of my life. Some of those memories are still deeply ingrained in my cells. So I still have to learn how to eat well. But these days, I really try to eat only permaculture, Japanese shumei farming products. I choose my products really well. This year, I'm really going to not even eat out at restaurants. Yeah, I'm going. Oh, wow. Yeah, this is a New Year resolution. It's hard in Taiwan because everything tastes so good, but you cannot control outside kitchens. The best pharmacy is your kitchen. There's a big push now in the West about ultra-processed foods. Mm-hmm. I can't believe I'm talking about it. I'm not even a dietitian. But, I always look at ingredients from the market, and if they have any additives, I've stopped eating those things, prepackaged foods.
It's now been about 7 years since you've written your book about your path of healing from depression, and now you teach. You hold online sessions with students from around the world who come to you just want to
balance. Yeah.
They reach out to you because they've read the book.
Yeah, a lot of my students read my books and felt that it really resonated with them. And honestly, they pushed for some of the class offerings because they felt like they needed those things from the book. And once I saw that there's a need, I try to fulfill them as much as I can, but knowing that the very first person I need to fulfill is myself, right? Mm-hmm. You need to be able to take care of yourself and be warm to yourself before you can take care of others and be warm to others.
They see you as a high-performing individual with this incredible past and who made this really brave decision and with so much experience now to offer to others who are on similar path. What do you tell them?
A lot of the course offerings center on the well-being of first our body and then our mind. And we have breathing classes. We have standing meditation, sitting meditation, music healing, and eating diets, because there's huge Taoist philosophies behind that. And then I try to help my students is to get rid of those emotional toxins. And they could be from the past. They could be from current situations triggered by the past. And so those are really difficult to get rid of. But if you get rid of them, you will slowly find yourself in better health. Your skin will look really good. Because the toxins are stored in our body and, it gets reflected in our intestinal health. And slowly things that used to irritate you won't irritate you as much. And it's all a process. Honestly, I feel like as I teach, I also learn. And like one student, I was so moved by her. She said there was almost like a calling, and then she came to the class. She was suffering from very bad skin rashes. And she said after the class is wrapped up, she was in deep pain, and then it cured. And I do not think that the classes have anything to do with her cure, because there are many causes and conditions. But I know that once you come back to your body and decide to really be with the body and take care of yourself, then miraculous things do happen. And in her case, she was trying to express gratitude, but I told her, like the deep gratitude really goes to yourself. You chose to come to the class. You chose to do the practice. You chose to love yourself, and the body will love you back and show whatever it is that you want to manifest. I'm not like a didactic person, and I really just trust that when they come to me, there's a reason, there's the beauty in every person we meet. And when they come to me, there must be a reason. And I am just here to support and to love. And sometimes that love awakens the deep love they have for themselves inside. And when that happens, then healing happens. Yeah. And it's not any scientific theories, although they did do that Japanese experiment. I can't remember about the water. Do you remember the water experiment? Like
No.
One group of water, they keep telling them horrible, mean things. And then one group of water tell them like loving kindness things. And then the scientists started to observe the water crystals. This was done in Japan. And then the water crystals changed based on the kind of messaging that you receive. So that's also like why it's important that you need to select the kind of messaging you receive. Because every day, if you're constantly surrounded by negativity, then your water crystal, and we're like, 70% water inside our body. So like your water crystals inside your body, and they're going to be that forming pretty crystals. So I was so shocked when I saw that experiment. So I have a teacher who has a book, and then she's always saying like, spread kindness. Just like continue to spread kindness, which I think our society's very good at. The Taiwanese society is such a beautiful society. But, sometimes we still need little reminders, like a smile, a word of praise and greetings. Continue to spread kindness.
You also prescribe your students with classical music?
Oh, yes. Different kinds of music, actually, based on sort of what they need at the time. I also record different little meditation segments for them, breathing meditation. A lot of the feedback I've gotten is that people really like my voice. And that's sort of shocking to me. But sometimes they would say they come to class and they didn't hear anything. They just fell asleep. And I said, that's great.
Why is it shocking that they like your voice? It's
No,
just
because for so long I was playing instruments. I was not a singer. So the healing voice is a new theme for me. But I am appreciating their comments and very happy to continue to teach and send the vibration through my voice in addition to the cello.
You don't advertise these classes.
As the book sort of speaks about, in that in the end, I felt the Buddhist Taoist philosophies really helped my transformation. And in the Taoist disciplines, we don't go and seek things. Things come to you like the waves in the ocean. They're just going to come, and you just stay present and stay happy and joyful, and things start to manifest. So that's really part of the teaching. And so I want to be preaching what I teach. And so some of these classes are open to only old-timers, regulars, some new classes. And if you want to be there, I trust that you'll be there.
I wanted to turn the chapter to the topic of trailing spouse. I think everybody was in that situation where you're moved to a place, right? Hence the term trailing spouse, because of your husband's work or your wife's work. For you, you had to go to China because his job moved the two of you there. And you feel like you have no choice in where you live, what happens to you in the next 3 years. Along with mental health,
Right.
the experience of a trailing spouse is also something not talked about as much.
There's always some baggage in terms of gender equalities, but also like we have to remember that that's just a concept. So we can go back to sort of like the basics of the functioning of a marriage, which I talked about briefly in the book, because, I am married, and I was lucky that I met my husband when I was at Harvard. We were longtime friends. But even for that situation, for me, after I got married, I had such a difficulty adjusting to my new identity as a wife, because I've been so used to running my own shows. I feel like I'm this great cellist, and I travel, and I get to call the shots, and how come now like there's another person and I have to adjust, and then some of the values that we grew up with also teach women to behave in a certain way, which certainly like I as a free spirit cannot totally adhere to. So it took a lot of time to come to understand what it means to be in a partnership, which is, the Chinese is 随顺. And that's those two words, going with the flow. That has such deep transformative meaning inside. I still continue to learn like every day from that. And I did not have that when I first got married, like I wanted to fight my husband. I wanted to like fight everything in life. And that probably also has to do with the fact that I had to go to the US when I was so young, and I had to fight for myself on everything in order to survive. So I had this pattern, deep-seated pattern, that I needed to fight to survive. And to go with the flow is a different kind of life philosophy. It's not passive. It's not like, oh, I'm going to give up. It's to learn how to use the things that are happening around you. So on the surface, it may seem that one could get upset when external conditions don't meet your expectations. For instance, if you have to move, which like apparently moving is like the second most stressful thing after death. So on the surface, there's an external event that is like, okay, you have to move as a family. And then, so the exercise is to go deep into the internal workings of, you start to look at like, do I have any thoughts or opinions about this move? So you start to sort of dissect what kind of opinions and thoughts you have about the move. And then you start to realize that it's not really the move that upsets you. It's what you think about the move that upsets you. And so as you deconstruct those patterns, thought patterns, you'll slowly come to a better illuminated place about why is it that an external situation hurts you so much, or you think it hurts you, but it's never the external situation. It's always the internal workings of your mind. Who's hurting you? It's the internal workings of your mind. It's not your mom. It's not your dad. It's not your husband. It's not your children. It's not your colleague. It's your mind. And so in my own practice, to get out of depression and to see clearly the inner workings of your mind is a huge exercise and huge chapter and huge things that I teach. And it takes like endless practices. But it's sort of, that's how I got out of the struggle. And then once you sort of get the hang of it, you'll realize that a lot of the relationships in your life will start to flow better. Because like our life, the quality of our life is really the quality of our relationships. Like Esther Perel says that. And so if your relationships with your parents, with your mom and your dad, your children, your husband, I taught a course on the wisdom of relationships. If all these relationships are working very well, you're probably going to be pretty happy. Like, there's not much that's bothering you. And then from there, you have a great relationship with your body and your health and just then like your friends, society, and then nature. Taoist talks about the great harmonious relationship with nature.
I think for a lot of people, it can still be very difficult to take that first step that you took so many years ago of deciding to draw a line and then figure the rest out, right? For people who are waiting to cross that line, what advice do you have?
It's weird. So I had a coach and in sort of like mapping out the vision that I had in terms of the work with my students. I don't even want to call them my students, like my peers. I had this vision that we were like on the top of the Swiss Alps, and it's like a beautiful, clear day, and each of them, mostly women, are like doing like the hanger gliding thing. And then I am there to accompany and push them off the cliff and make sure that they're okay. So I think a lot of the deep internal work that I just talked about, it may sound easy because I'm just here, blah, blah. But, it took like so many painful years. I cannot begin to tell you the amount of suffering that I was in and how difficult it is to learn these things. It really takes time. So I want to remind everyone to be very patient and loving with yourself and know that, help and love is all around you. And when you're ready, help is there.
Anything else you wanted to add?
I think just be very loving. Okay, I have to rephrase. So when you say like be loving to yourself, but if you never experience or receive unconditional love, sometimes it's hard to know what loving means because you've never experienced or received it. And I believe that a lot of people in the boomer generation, like because they just came out of all the traumas of the war, they probably, like my parents probably didn't receive a lot of love from their parents, and their parents didn't get any love from their parents because everyone was war obsessed. And so then it's really hard to give because how can you give something that you never received? But I would then say make yourself comfortable. So like in any situations, first come back to you and think about how you can make yourself comfortable. And this is not selfish. This is about maintenance and great caretaking. And so if you're with your family, if you're at work, if you are on the street, just constantly check in and see how can I make my day a little better today? How can I make myself more comfortable? Like right now, I'm sitting in this chair talking with Emily, and entire being is extremely comfortable. And I can feel my butt, I can feel my hands, I can feel my neck, I can feel like my relaxed posture. And so constantly check in with yourself and make sure that you're comfortable.
Is there a piece of music that you can suggest us and listen to?
That's a great idea. I was just in Vienna and I loved the Strauss waltzes there. And I I was listening and like just was like, wow, this is really great music. So for the new year, enjoy some waltzes, everyone.
Sounds good. We will we'll get a link in the show notes for that. Thank you so much, Mimi.
Thank you for having me. I feel so honored to be on your show, and I've been such an admirer for so long of your podcast and everything you do. So thank you.
I've been an admirer of your work. The third book is so different, but the way that you have laid it out so bare in the book, it's so much courage, so much generosity in sharing your stories.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, the pain when I was younger, I always sort of thought that, hoping that everything that I had to go through wouldn't be in vain, and that one day probably it could help someone else, because we are all connected in the end. Yeah. And when you're vibrating on a very high frequency, then others around you will also vibrate. And if we're all vibrating on very high frequency, then our entire world and our entire society will be much better off. And, right now we're heading towards a more tumultuous era of human history. But if we all remember that we're all connected and vibrating together, and then things will be better.
That was musician and writer Mimi Yu. Her third book, The Unforgetting Body, published in 2019 in traditional Mandarin by Commonwealth, is still on sale at bookstores. For Mandarin listeners, she also has a podcast on Global Views magazine feed, 远见杂志. We'll have a link for that in the show notes. This has been the Ghost Island Media production, recorded at Future Word Co-working Space in Taipei, Taiwan. I'm Emily, and this episode was made with help from Wayne Tsai, Zach Jiang, and Sonia Schlesinger. Happy Dragon Boat Festival.
Ghost
Island Media.